Welcome to the Three Championship Drive podcast on YouTube, hosted by me, Lance Caporossi. Follow me on X at Lance Caporossi, the same way you see it spelled on the screen. Do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, like the video, but more importantly, tell a Pistons fan, because I definitely appreciate that. All right, welcome to the podcast, you guys. I just have a quick question that I'm going to answer later on, but who will lead the Pistons in scoring, rebounding, assist, steals, blocks, field goal percentage, three-pointers made, and three-point percentage? Also, we'll throw in free throw percentage as well. Well, I'm here to look into a crystal basketball and tell you what the future holds. But first, the Detroit Pistons have an open roster spot and are sitting on $10.2 million in cap space. Detroit has let teams know they're open to eating smaller salaries, provided they come with draft compensation. This was tweeted out by Keith Smith, as league sources told Spot Track. You know, I like to gamble from time to time. I find it enjoyable. I think it can be a lot of fun, that's for sure. Well, and the thing is, I'm going to bet the Detroit Pistons keep that open spot and look to make a move at the deadline. I just don't see them signing anybody right now unless Trajan Langdon and JB Bickerstaff feel there is a need to bring in a backup point guard, because I feel like they're good at the 2, the 3, the 4, and the 5 right now. I feel like those positions, they are good. Point guard, I also feel like it's good. I mean, you have Cade Cunningham, and I'm comfortable with Jaden Ivey playing the point guard role as well. Then you also have Marcus Sasser. You also have Tim Hardaway Jr., who could bring the ball up. And you have Dennis Jenkins on a two-way. So, again, I don't see the Detroit Pistons signing anybody. Now, when I look at the available free agents, I'm looking on spottrack.com. The only guards I'm interested in, and I've said these names plenty of times on the podcast, and that's Markelle Fultz and Dennis Smith Jr. I like both of those guards. I think, they've been fantastic when given the opportunity. Markelle Fultz, a 6'4" guard, more known for defense, helped establish that culture in Orlando, still struggles offensively, but can get to the rim and he can finish. And I think that there's enough floor spacing on this team where, it could work for a Markelle Fultz. And then Dennis Smith Jr., his career, it's been up and down, especially since that rookie season where he looked really promising. And then Dallas, they bring in Luka, and we know how the story unfolds for Dennis Smith Jr. It's just been team after team after team. He's pretty much a journeyman at this point, and now he's looking for a home. But he did have a stop in Detroit. I believe he had like a triple-double or two when he was here. Showed some flashes. Very good defensively as well. The only thing I think stopping either of these guys coming to play for the Detroit Pistons is that there's just not a lot of minutes to be given around. And I just don't think either of those guys are comfortable coming to Detroit and playing limited minutes, knowing that their careers in the NBA they're on the fringe. They got 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I mean, you probably only have a few more years left of competing and trying to get to a team before you just say, hey, you know what? I'm going to go overseas and make some money. And I think that's where both those guys are at. But, those are two names that I'm interested in if the Detroit Pistons were willing to use some of that cap space. But again, I don't think the Pistons actually use the cap space to bring anybody in unless there's a guy out there that becomes available that the Pistons like, yeah, we got to go out and get that guy. But I feel like the Pistons, they're going to hold on to that cap space and make a move at the deadline, whether it's, just bringing in a bad contract and getting some draft compensation or maybe being in on a 3-team trade. I just think that's where they're going to use it. Right now, I feel like teams are just still looking at their rosters, seeing what they have. They want to get this regular season started before they make any more moves. That's why I think that 15th roster spot is still going to be available to start the season. And I'll just say it too. I will say it. I am comfortable with the Pistons giving Dennis Jenkins and Marcus Sasser an opportunity. If an injury happens to either Cade or Jaden Ivey, God forbid, if an injury happens to either of those guys, I'm comfortable with Sasser and I'm comfortable with Dennis Jenkins. I've seen enough from both of them where it's like, again, you're not going to win games with these guys starting at the point guard spot, but can they hold the spot down until one of those guys returns. Hopefully, we don't have to find out. But again, I'm comfortable, at least to give it a try to see if those two guys can do it. And if they can't, then use the cap space, whether it's in a trade or to bring someone else in. So the Detroit Pistons have used their final two-way contracts. I'm actually surprised by this because I thought they had to fill out the final roster spot before they could use the final two-way, but they used the final two-way to sign Alondes Williams and Cole Swider to the last two-way spots. The Pistons now have three two-way players, which is the maximum allowed. Alondes Williams is a well-traveled pro with stops in Brooklyn, Long Island, Sioux Falls, and the Miami Heat. He was also named the G League Player of the Year. He can do a little bit of everything on the basketball court. I believe when he was the G League Player of the Year, he averaged like 20 points, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. He can do a little bit of everything on the basketball floor. I just don't see him actually making the Pistons roster. I don't know if we'll see him suit up for the Pistons this year just because I mean, they're good on the perimeter. They're good at the positions that this guy plays, which are, guard and forward. Now, maybe if injuries happen, then you might see him. But if you're one of those fans that thinks, hey, you know what, this guy, he can change the fortunes of the franchise, it's just not going to happen with Alondes Williams. And the goal Swider, he has played 25 regular season NBA games for the Los Angeles Lakers and the Miami Heat. He is a true floor spacer, loves to shoot the three. That's what he's known for. Basketball Reference has him listed at 6'9" as a three-man. Great height. I just don't know if his career is going to turn into be more than anything than a journeyman. But I do think it's interesting, like when you bring him to the G League, I think having a floor spacer like that is a good thing to have for any player's development. So cool for the G League to bring him, cool for the Motor City Cruise to bring him in. One of those guys, though, I just don't see him making the Pistons roster. I don't see him getting minutes over Simone, Tobias Harris, Tim Hardaway Jr., Malik Beasley. Then you got some young guys like Bobby Clement and Ron Holland that you want to get minutes for. I just don't see this guy making the roster at all. But it's good to have floor spacing on the two-way contract. Both of those guys, I think they're both 25 years old. So they're a little bit older as, and more well-traveled than some of the other guys that you could have seen make a two-way contract for the Detroit Pistons. That's fine, though. So who leads the Detroit Pistons in scoring? Who leads them in rebounding? Who leads them in assist? Who leads them in blocks, steals, field goal percentage, free throw percentage, three-point percentage, and three-pointers made? Well, like I said at the top of the podcast, let me just get out the crystal basketball, take a look, and, I'm going to tell you the future here for a second. So for scoring, I'm going to go Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris, and Jaden Ivey. It's super easy. I just don't know who other than those three are going to lead this team in scoring on a consistent basis. I think you'll get some games from Jalen Duren. You might even get a game or two from Simone Fontecchio. Malik Beasley might just catch fire and hit like 9 threes and lead the team in scoring. But those three, Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris, and Jaden Ivey, I think you see Cade Cunningham average over 24. I think Tobias Harris is probably around like 19, maybe 21. And then Jaden Ivey, I think we'll get at least 17 a game from him every night. So those are my three leading scorers. I could see Jalen Duren, though, actually cracking this. I mean, I know he doesn't have the offensive game as the other three, but they are going to be looking for him, as a lob threat, and he loves to run the floor. He's good around the basket when it comes to getting offensive rebounds. There's going to be a lot of putbacks for him. And I just feel like if guys get in trouble when they're in the paint, he's an easy outlet because he's always near the rim. So, I mean, I could easily see Jalen Duren cracking this for the Detroit Pistons. But again, scoring, and this is points per game, Cade Cunningham, Tobias Harris, and Jaden Ivey. You could probably say they're also going to be the three that give you the most points during the season in terms of total points. But again, I feel like scoring was really easy between these three for the Detroit Pistons. I mean, again, Jalen Duren might be able to crack it. Maybe Simone Fontecchio does something. But maybe Tim Hardaway finds some youth and finds his shot where he cracks it. But I think it's pretty safe to pick Cade, Tobias, and Jaden Ivey. Now for rebounding, I'm going to throw a person's name in here, and it really shouldn't surprise anybody. But I think the order is going to go Jalen Duren, Asar Thompson, if he's healthy, and then Isaiah Stewart, and then you can throw in Paul Reed as well. I'm going with the bigs in this one. I mean, Jalen Duren, dude, he was amazing on the glass last year. Isaiah Stewart, he's a very good rebounder, and now that he won't be playing so far away from the basket, I can easily see him averaging more rebounds than he did last year just by being in position to grab rebounds. And then Asar Thompson, I mean, those first 18 games under Monty Williams, his rookie year, I believe he was averaging around 9 a game. He just has a nose for the ball. But again, this depends on if he's healthy or not. And if he's healthy, I could see him being second on the team in rebounds per game and total rebounds. But if for some reason he misses the season, hopefully that's not the case. I see Paul Reed being number 3 in rebounds. If I had to pick a player that I think could sneak in and surprise a few people, I would say Cade Cunningham. I feel like he rebounded the ball pretty well during the preseason. I feel like he's been pretty aggressive. I don't know if he makes it into the top 3, but Tobias Harris, that might be a guy that he might be able to do it. So for his career, he's averaged 6 rebounds per game. In last year on the Philadelphia 76ers, he averaged 6.5 rebounds per game. For at one point in 82 games in 2018 and 2019 between the Clippers and the Philadelphia 76ers, he averaged 8 rebounds per game. In 27 games for the Orlando Magic, his second year in the league, he averaged 8.5 rebounds per game. He can rebound the ball pretty well. He can be up there as well for the Detroit Pistons. He's a guy that I think can do it. And really, now that I'm talking about it out loud, if Asar can't play, maybe Paul Reed doesn't get enough minutes to qualify for this. So maybe Tobias Harris is the third leading rebounder for the Detroit Pistons this year. Assist, this is an easy one for the top 2. I'm going Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. They're most likely going to have the highest usage out of anybody on this team. They're going to have the ball in their hands a lot. They're going to be able to make a lot of decisions. I really think this is a year 2 that Cade could get in the top 10 for assists per game in the NBA, potentially even top 5. I like you heard me. If you're listening to the podcast last week, I said 8 to 10 assists per game. I think he can do it with as many floor spacers on here. Jaden Ivey, he's probably going to get, maybe 4 to 5 a game for the Detroit Pistons, which is good. And I think that would put him on second. Now, the third name I have on this for this category, it might surprise a few people, but it's Jalen Duren. I really think Jalen Duren could be top 3 in assists for the Detroit Pistons. I feel like this guy's going to get a lot of opportunity to catch the ball in the short roll and then kick it out to the corners. We've seen him do it plenty of times. I believe he had like 28 games last year with 3 or more assists. I could be wrong about the 28. And I believe like 8 of those were wins, but I'm going off of memory. But Jalen Duren, he can pass the ball, and I feel like JB Bickerstaff is going to put him in a position to, play make a little bit more. And I think we're all ready to see it. So Jalen Duren, he would be my third player to lead the Pistons. He would be number 3 in assists. Tobias Harris might be able to do it. I know he's going to get the ball a lot as well. He's going to have high usage. But my 3 are Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, and Jalen Duren. Those are the 3 at least I want to see. So now we're on to field goal percentage. I broke this up into perimeter players and then bigs. So for perimeter players, I have Tobias Harris. Last year, he shot 48.7% from the field, which I believe would have been 3rd or 4th on the Pistons, behind Duren, James Wiseman, and I believe Isaiah Stewart. Because again, I'm not counting guys like Taj Gibson and Danilo Gallinari and Mike Muscala. I'm not counting those guys. They didn't play enough here. So I think he would be right behind those guys. But for perimeter players, I believe he would have been number one. Number two that I have is Simone Fontecchio. He shot 47.9% from the field for the Detroit Pistons last year. I could easily see him being number one for perimeter players because one, he's going to have less offensive responsibility coming off the bench, but also there's so much more offensive firepower where it's going to take less eyes off of him. I mean, he's still one of those guys you have to game plan for. Like if when they're doing film breakdown and they're doing their scouting, they're definitely talking about Simone Fontecchio. But I think he's a guy that Tobias Harris will probably be number one. Simone Fontecchio will be closely behind him at number two. Number three, I'm going Cade Cunningham. He shot, I believe, 44% from the field last year, maybe around 45, depending on if you round up or not. I think that number is going to jump up just with that much floor spacing there is right now. He added a floater and a runner to his game, he said this offseason. I feel like he's going to be better around the rim. It felt like he was being more aggressive even when bigs were in his way. I feel like Cade Cunningham is going to be, he could be number one, but I'm going to play it safe and say he's number three when it comes to the perimeter players. Now, for the bigs, it's going to be Jalen Duren, it's going to be Paul Reed, and it's going to be Isaiah Stewart. I mean, those guys are the only. Maybe you could throw Bobby Clement. I don't know if he'll play enough games or get enough minutes to actually qualify for it. But if we're talking about guys that are playing majority of the games this season, getting bulk of the minutes, I think it's going to go Jalen Duren, Paul Reed, and Isaiah Stewart. That's just my opinion. Now, threes made. This one's interesting, but I'm going Malik Beasley. I think it's going to be easy for the first two. Malik Beasley and Simone Fontecchio. Those are my two to lead the Pistons in threes made this season. Number three, it might surprise a few people, but I'm going Jaden Ivey at number three. I feel like Tim Hardaway Jr., it's going to be close between those two, but also I feel like Tim Hardaway Jr. could be one of those guys that they move on from during the season, but also if he continues to struggle shooting the ball, you might see Ron Holland get his minutes. You might see Bobby Clement get his minutes. You might see Marcus Sasser playing a few more minutes early in the season. So I'm going to say Jaden Ivey's number three, which which would be kind of a big deal. But I'm trusting his jumper. It looks good. He's surprised me with it during the preseason. You see those clips circulating on social media where he is constantly working with Fred Vincent. So I'm excited. I think Jaden Ivey will be number three when it comes to total made three-pointers for the Detroit Pistons. Now, three-point percentage, I'm going Malik Beasley, even though I think he's going to have probably the most attempts. He's going to have the most makes, but he's also going to have the highest three-point percentage as well. I really believe this with Malik Beasley. I think he's going to shoot 40% from the three. It's going to be close between him and Simone Fontecchio. That's my one. That's my two. Number three, I have Isaiah Stewart. I feel like he's going to take enough threes to qualify for this, but they're also going to be good threes. They're also going to be, from that five spot when, we're not asking him and saying, hey, we need you to take 4 or 5 a game. That would be nice, but I think he's going to scale it back a little bit, but they're going to be high quality threes that he's going to be taking. That's why I have him at number three. Now, blocks. This is an interesting one because I think it's actually going to be Paul Reed. He had 84 blocks, I believe, last year for the Philadelphia 76ers. Let's just check this out real quick. Yeah, he had 84 blocks in 82 games last year for the Sixers. I don't think Paul Reed plays 82 games for the Detroit Pistons this year, but injuries do happen. Foul trouble happens. Guys might be having an off night where you might want to get a different look. I think Paul Reed leads the Pistons in total blocks and maybe even blocks per game. I don't know. Then I have Isaiah Stewart coming in at number two. When he was playing the five, his rookie and his second year in the league, he had a higher block percentage. He has that long wingspan. He likes to be around the rim. He likes to use that strength of his. I believe he's going to be number two in total blocks for the Detroit Pistons. Number 3, I'm going with Jalen Duren as default. Asar Thompson, if he's healthy, I think he will be number 3. That's a guy that's real active. I feel like he's gonna get a lot of weak side blocks. It's just a guy he's gonna try to make an impact from the on the defensive side. And defensive side, blocks. That's where it comes from. Asar Thompson, if he's healthy, I think he'll be number 3, which he could probably easily be number 2 as well. But again, we got to see if he's healthy. Steals, I got Jaden Ivey at number 1. I think he's going to be very active, kind of playing defense in terms of like maybe like a free safety where he's going to be roaming a lot, going to be able to use his athleticism and speed to jump the lanes. Cade Cunningham, I have him at number 2. I think it'll be close between those two as well. Cade, pretty good at stealing the ball, not bad at all. And then I have Ron Holland at number 3. But again, if Asar Thompson's healthy, I could see him easily cracking the 3rd spot on this list as well. Last year, Cade had 56 steals in 62 games, which gave him around 1 per game in average, which was 0.9. He's always, for his career, he's averaging 1. He definitely has active hands when it comes to the defensive side of things. Now, on to free throw percentage. I'm going to say Cade leads the team in free throw percentage. I'll say Simone Fontecchio is number 2. Then number 3, I'm going to say it's Jaden Ivey. I think Jaden Ivey can do it. I think he's going to get to the line the most out of anybody on this team as well. Secondly, I think it might be Jalen Duren and then Cade Cunningham if he gets a favorable whistle from the refs. So that's my list. That's my predictions for the Detroit Pistons and who will lead what in each statistical category. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And thank you guys for listening to the 3 Championship Drive podcast. Do me a favor, go to Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts and hit the follow button. After you hit the follow button, rate with 5 stars. Leave a review by telling me who you think will lead the Pistons in scoring, rebounding, and assist. But more importantly, tell a Pistons fan